Did you ever regret talking to a therapist psychiatrist? Why? Yeah, when I was in my late teens, this therapist suggested I should only think happy thoughts, that the abuse I received was my own fault for not standing up for myself, and when all of that didn't work, she prescribed a high dose of Xanax for me. Literally said she would be beating the shit out of her own daughter if she ever becomes like me. I thought this was the norm, and she was right. A better therapist later on told me that she was messed up and demanded the company she was with to make sure she wouldn't ever have another client again. Apparently she got many complaints as she did this to many of her clients. I did. I found it really difficult to talk about things, and it was emotionally draining. I'm a reserved kind of guy, and I don't talk about that kind of thing, so opening up was unnatural and too much to deal with for me. I also saw a Christian therapist, which in hindsight maybe wasn't the best idea for someone questioning their sexuality. Oh no, my parents brought me to a Christian therapist too when they found out I was watching gay video. Luckily, he was really chill and basically just told me, "There's nothing wrong with you. It's fine to be gay, and your parents are probably the ones who need therapy, but they wouldn't like to hear that lol, and we just talk about school or regular teenager stuff instead." It ended up helping me a lot because my parents were too busy freaking out about me being gay to even listen to my regular teenage problems and worries. I've been seeing a therapist for a year, and it's been great. Some sessions are better than others, but it's helped me considerably with my issues of anxiety and depression. However, she suggested that I try one of the group classes, and I was hesitant. But I figured that the worst that could happen was a bad experience, and signed up for one. It went fine until the doctor-teacher asked to share what was bothering us. I was not at all prepared for this. It takes a long time for me to open up to someone other than a doctor about this stuff. I was not remotely okay with sharing this information with total strangers. I basically had an anxiety attack while waiting for my turn, and did my best to hide it when I was asked to speak, but I wasn't able to form coherent sentences. The doctor reminded me to try some of the basic anxiety coping mechanisms, and I basically clammed up after that. I spent the rest of the class trying to not dwell on the fact that I had a fucking anxiety attack right in front of people. I felt worse after that than I did before I started seeking help. It only really took me a week or so to feel normal again, but there is no fucking way that I'll ever do any kind of group therapy again. Yes. Husband and I went to marriage counseling after a large marriage-altering event. He chose a Christian counselor. I had misgivings, but went anyway. Chick basically spent every session telling us to read some workbook she was selling, not even one she had written, and then ended in prayer. Yeah, not helpful at all. We ended up only going a handful of times and working things out on our own instead. Conversely, my wife and I saw a Christian counselor who was properly credentialed and really did a lot to help us save our marriage. It's all about vetting them ahead of time. My parents had issues when I was a kid. They did marriage counseling. It took 4 counselors before they found one willing to actually help with the problems. The others all pushed heavily for separation and time apart. When they would tell them that wasn't an option they wanted to explore, they continued to push and basically told them they weren't serious about counseling if they weren't going to consider all the options. Which is funny because the first 3 counselors were only willing to discuss separation and not other ways to fix their problems. They managed to work it out and were married for 33 years before my dad passed away. They would be celebrating 38 years next week if he was still alive. There was a time when I felt down a lot, so I figured seeing a therapist might be a smart move. She told me emotions are a triangle of happy, sad, and angry IRC. Whenever you feel sad or angry, just think about things that make you happy. That's it, that's all there is to it apparently. Thanks, Doc. I am happy. I should focus on what makes me angry and sad instead. Got to aim for the center of that triangle. Yes, she repeated, what I have to do is changing my personality. Feeling depressed and anxious is about my personality. Interesting. I wouldn't say I ever regretted anything, but it took a lot of time and patience to find the right therapist. I don't really know how to explain it, but you just kinda have to find one that you click with. I eventually did, but she was a psychiatrist, so I could only see her every 8 weeks, and her job was mostly about adjusting my meds and trying to help me find a psychologist I could also click with. Not completely. I'm mostly convinced my therapist and I just weren't a good match, and that she was too mild for the size of my issues, combined with me not being able to explain the size of my issues very well. I came to therapy with one major problem, and through the process of her asking questions, she made it about something completely different. I wanted to talk about my problems, but she wanted to talk about completely other stuff, in this case mostly my parents. Not denying it, my parents had been a problem factor for most of my life, so I don't blame her, 'cause the stories I told about my parents were quite problematic. But I already knew that and had accepted that. My parents weren't the reason I went to therapy. Now, since this was my first time having therapy, I kinda told myself that she knew what she was doing and that maybe my parents did play a bigger factor than I thought. However, nearing the end of therapy and afterwards, I didn't feel like anything was solved at all. Even if my main problem was my parents, it ended up in just accepting that they were shit, which I already knew. My actual problem wasn't solved in any way, and it pretty much just ended up being a waste of time and money. The only useful thing I got out of it was general cognitive therapy strategies which deal with generally figuring out where your actions and thought patterns originate from. Therefore, I don't completely regret it, and also because it taught me how to act next time I ever seek therapy, and that is to be very clear about what is bothering you and what it is you want to solve. I do want to stress that there is rarely a reason to not go to therapy, 'cause I feel like this thread may be a derivative of that question. Therapy can definitely help a great deal, even if just for the sake of spilling your thoughts to someone. My mistake was that I kinda went along with whatever my therapist said or asked. You need to remember that you are the one this therapy is meant for, and you need to be the one walking out the door feeling at least the slightest bit lighter or more understood. The therapist's life isn't affected much, they will do whatever they think will help you, and if you agree too soon, they won't keep digging. It's necessary for you to do some actual prepping beforehand to make clear for yourself what it is you want and need. Stay your ground, don't quit until you get the results you want, and therapy could be a really, really great thing. Mixed. At first I had a bad one that kept making me relive a traumatic experience. That actually made me much worse. I switched to CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, where I didn't speak about specific things at all, just retrained my brain handle experiences differently. That was fantastic, best thing I could ever have done. Only took about 8 or 10 weeks appointments, and the results lasted forever. Yeah, wife and I went to a marriage counselor. He tried to rub one off when we were talking about our sex life. Did you make a complaint? I hope he got fired for it. Well, we fired him. He was in an individual practice, nobody to complain to. Guess the only recourse would be to complain to the medical board. And also the police. Yes and no. None of the therapists I've seen were a good fit for me, but in that process I did figure out a few little insights that have helped over time. The first therapist was horrible. I had 2 sessions. I told them it was very important that my sessions are after 4 p.m. so I don't have to deal with telling work I'm seeing a therapist. The therapist said they would keep to that, then kept trying to schedule appointments at 2 p.m. and telling me my work should be okay with it. Yes and no. I wasn't in a place where I wanted to deal with any potential stigma though. Then the therapist told me I was a vindictive and malicious person with anger issues because I expressed frustration about having to support my unemployed boyfriend who spent all day playing video games instead of applying for jobs. He did lay out 4 treatment plans, told me to pick one without telling me what they were. Then he told me I picked the wrong one and I should do a different one. I stopped seeing them after that. I gave the boyfriend a harsh talking to. Told him to cut the bullshit and get a goddamn job because I wasn't going to stick around until he made us broke. He got a job and did very well at that company and has gone from being on the phones to a quality manager in 5 years, and is now my husband. We're doing great. My second therapist was a little better, but after about 5 sessions he told me, "You sound depressed and I can't help you if you're not going to do anything about that." I told him I was depressed and I didn't know what to do about it because I didn't know why I was depressed when we started. He also claimed to specialize in treating depression and anxiety. He did try, I guess. He gave me a few articles about a few theories I didn't really agree with. I kind of felt like a project or a study with him though. He was pretty young, only a few years out of university. I quit my latest therapist recently. I've been seeing her for about 6 months, every 3 weeks or so. About 10 sessions maybe. She was dead set on me pursuing a diagnosis for dyslexia, which to her credit has led me to pursuing a diagnosis for ADHD, which the GP and hospital think is possible. However, once I told her this, she kept trying to discourage that because she thought it was dyslexia. She was apparently dyslexic. Then she kept bringing up which essential oils I could use to treat it. She was big into essential oils as a hobby. Yeah, no, none of them, except the first, ever gave me any sort of treatment plan or anything to work on between sessions. So yeah, the journey helped a little, the therapists themselves didn't really help that much. I've instead found that prioritizing myself over my friends helps, and that I really need physical exercise to stay happy. When I don't work out, I get low moods that turn into depressive phases. When I exercise and eat right, I do much better and I'm much happier. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.